All right. Here we are.
Woo!
Back again.
Yeah, we are.
Season 3. Josh, if you don't know, we don't really have a set intro. I put some music in post, and it's probably wrapping up right about now. And then voila, we just start talking.
That's the best way to do it.
The awkwardness of our intro is zestiness. That's what we do.
It's perfect. All right. Well, if the audience hasn't figured it out already, we have a guest this week. Josh, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Josh Lindell. I am a grad student, just right at the end of my PhD, studying molar teeth at the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg. And I also teach biological anthropology and archaeology there. And I host a podcast very similar to your podcast called Screens of the Stone Age, where we review movies about prehistory. So you kind of pick up where we leave off, I think.
That's awesome, man. We don't do video yet, but just so the audience knows, he's wearing a hoodie of his own podcast, and that's awesome.
We do have a contest on our show, which will end as soon as our show gets too popular for me to be able to afford doing it anymore. But if you can listen to an episode and find a mistake that we made, do a little bit of peer review, send our mistakes that we've made to me by email, and I'll send you a free t-shirt. But as soon as I get too many responses to that, the contest stops, because I can only afford to do it because we're still a pretty small podcast.
Bro, we couldn't do that. We'd go bankrupt. We couldn't.
We wouldn't have made it past season 1.
Dude, the Doctor Strangelove episode alone.
All right. So, Kyle, what are we talking about this week?
Oh, boy. Man, I wish I had better news for you about that. I really do. We're talking about the epically something movie.
The epically not epic.
The epically not epic Wyatt Earp with stone spears is what it's being called for the people who are in the know. And by those people, I just mean myself and Dustin. 10,000 BC, which sounds so much cooler than it is.
Uh-huh. I mean, whoever came up with the title really should have got most of the money off of this. 10,000 BC from 2008. Oh, man, I remember seeing these trailers growing up. All the time. I remember seeing the trailer for this. This movie was one that they used to showcase how great Blu-ray was as high definition. Yeah. Does anyone else remember those?
Yeah. It was this and Revenge of the Fallen, the second Transformers movie, where you need to get these on Blu-ray so you can see all the details.
So you can see the details of our great CGI. Man, where do you even start with this movie? Okay, so we just talked about last week how we need to have a little snippet of, hey, we talked about spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, you should probably watch it first. I'm going to go ahead and just spoil the whole movie for you. Don't watch it. Just don't watch it.
That's our recommendation. Or do, but be lightly drunk is what I would suggest. Not so drunk that you can't remember what you just watched.
I don't even know, man. This is not... And I think you guys said the same thing on your episode. This is not so bad it's good. It's just bad.
Mm-hmm. I was reading a review from somebody on Reddit, and they described it as serious without being smart and stupid without being funny.
That's perfect.
Yeah, that is the perfect way to describe this movie.
I also read one that said mundane where it should be over the top, and over the top where it should be mundane. And I'm like, yes, also that.
Very good. I'm going to go through just a couple of our characters here. Again, we just did Northman. Hopefully I can say these names a little bit better.
Oh Lord, here we go.
It's the main character, and it's Delay. Is that how you say his name?
The nice thing about this movie is that they're made up languages, they're made up cultures. You're not going to offend anybody by mispronouncing these ones.
Perfect.
So.
I'm offended. I'm always offended when Dustin
He's always offended. I do like that there's one named Karen, and it's literally Karen.
And he's a Karen.
He is a total Karen. He's played by Delay is played by Stephen Strait. Evelyn is played by Camilla Bell, who is in the 2006 remake of When a Stranger Calls. I was like, I know her
that very few of these names are going to ring a bell. There's a reason for that.
There's a reason. Cliff Curtis plays Tit Tit, and he also, I was like, I know this guy. He plays Mac from the Meg. Josh, I was going to ask you, have you guys covered the Meg? Does that count as prehistory?
We haven't, but we've done stuff that's more tangentially related to prehistory than that. So I have thought about covering that one. Is it worth covering?
The Meg is a fun movie. It's stupid, but it's fun. It's not like this. It's it's entertaining.
I'm sure it won't be nearly the worst movie we've seen. When we covered 10,000 BC, we said it was the worst movie we'd ever seen, and by now we've seen a lot worse than this one. But there are some really bad caveman movies for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to count it as a request or what, but I will definitely listen to an episode on the Meg because it's a guilty pleasure for sure.
Okay, I'll add that to our list for sure.
Narrated by Omar, I'm gonna say this wrong, Sharif. He's best known for his performance in Lawrence of Arabia. They actually probably the most well respected actor in this movie is not on screen the entire time. All right, we're gonna get to our problem here. Written and directed by Roland Emmerich, director of The Patriot. Okay,
And Independence Day.
and Independence Day. And Godzilla 98, and most embarrassing, he directed 2012. Which
is still somehow a better movie than this.
is 2012 is better. Oh, that's a hot take. Is that a hot take? I don't know. That's a
I don't
toss
know.
up for me. Co-written by Harold Closer, probably saying that wrong too. The other Roland Emmerich movie that he wrote. Take one guess. It's 2012. It's 2012.
Yeah.
That's the problem here. That's the problem. It is sitting at somehow a 5.1, which on IMDb, that's still terrible. The Rotten Tomatoes score for this is where it's really at. Critic rating, 9%.
Critic rating?
9%. Audience gave it 37. Audience, you're wrong.
You are. I'm with the critics on this one. The audience gave it a C. On like Metacritic or whatever, audience members gave it a C based off the
Wrong.
Wikipedia page. And first I thought, man, it's so hard to get a C because most people are just so easily entertained, myself included. Like if there's enough explosions and enough good one-liners, it's a B- movie, you know? So to have audience members polled and give it a C is ridiculous.
Now,
Really bad.
You just said that and something just popped into my mind. And I think I could have saved this movie if they would have asked me.
Blow up the pyramid.
No.
Oh,
It needs to
okay,
star
never mind.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
They should have. And they
Yes.
should have made absolutely no sense why he's twice the size of everyone else around him. They never should have explained it.
I am the wielder of the white spear.
Get to the mammoth.
I don't think that would have made this movie make any less sense than it does.
They could have called it Caveman the Barbarian.
Oh,
My
no.
good man. It was right there.
Oh. Okay, you guys want to hear something even wilder?
Terma Mammoth.
Terma mammoth. What's even crazier than anything else? This movie made $269 million.
The silence. The justification.
How? Who went to see this movie? I guess, okay, it's 2008. The internet, like, reviews are definitely easy to find. Why are so many people going to see this?
So my theory, because I remember, granted I was 10, but I remember being excited for this movie, probably because of Josh's earlier point that good caveman movies like don't exist. And so briefly, when you watch the trailer, you're like, you can tell that it's anachronistic from the trailer, but you're like, this could be cool. Like this could be fun. And so you go to watch it and then you're like, oh no, it's bad. But there also weren't streaming sites. So your options were go see it for yourself and see how bad it is if you believe the people, or wait 6 months for it to come out in like family video.
Blockbuster. Yeah. So, $105 million budget though. I guess that kind of helps explain it. At least it wasn't like a Waterworld situation. So, director,
That movie might be as bad as this one.
I've never seen it. Anyways, moving on. Roland said in an interview it took 10 to 15 years to make this movie. That's a big gap. Moving on. Because that's the time it took to perfect the visual effects. He says, and this is actually like in a little behind the scenes thing. He says the mammoths have 1 million hairs each each one of them reacting to its own environment and movements. Each frame requires 10 hours of effects work each frame. So if you do, he says 1 minute of film is 14,000 hours. Okay. Yeah, 23 frames per second. 6-minute mammoth chase scene, and he ends it with "you do the math." Okay, well, I did the math. Let's break this down. One frame is 10 hours, 23 frames per second, 230 hours per second. Okay, that's ridiculous. 230 frames per second times 60 seconds per minute. That's 13,800 hours apparently per minute for the visual effects. There's a 6-minute mammoth chase scene, which is 82,800 hours. That is 6,912-hour shifts, which makes 18.9 years if you worked every day, 12 hours a day.
So he's full of crap.
So this doesn't add up.
Because I can tell you something about those mammoths. They do not have that many hairs. They do not all react to the wind differently.
While he's saying this, they're showing some behind the scenes of the visual effects, and they're literally like just kind of molding all of the, like all the mammoths are all together and they're just like the same. It's like you literally, your footage doesn't even back up your claim of what you're saying here.
See, there are two different types of directors. There's that, and then there are the Peter Jacksons of the world where like I could not hire 6,000 horsemen, so I found 500 and then I just duplicated them 12 times and made an army because nobody can tell the difference.
This is when you let someone's ego run wild and they don't have the talent to back it up. I'm just gonna say it. I'm sorry. I'm being mean to this guy. You'll find out why later. Okay. The Legend of the Child with Blue Eyes. Let's start this movie. I wrote down some questions.
Let's not. Hear me out.
All right, never mind. Episode's over. Goodbye, everybody.
Let's not pretend we did.
So I write down questions, and even okay, I'm the guy who watched all of Troy before realizing that none of it actually took place and it was all based on a tale. And I was like, oh, I feel like an idiot. I made it about 10 minutes into this movie. I was like, none of this is real. I was like, none of this is real. There's no way.
He's learning, guys.
I am. Listen to more podcasts. You'll learn too.
Yeah. The
blue-eyed child brings prophecy. This is so stupid.
We can do it. We can do it.
We can do this.
The game face is on.
The blue-eyed child brings prophecy of the last great hunt. 4-legged demons, aka men on horses, and the end of their people. One does not believe the prophecy. He leaves in the night, leaving behind his son, Delay. I still don't know how to say his name.
Proving that child abandonment is a tale as old as time.
Child abandonment is sometimes beneficial. I saw it in a movie. Delay tells Evelyn, the blue-eyed child, that she will never be alone. He's going to repeat this later on. Great exposition by the narrator, who simply tells us they fell in love instead of letting us watch it unfold.
Let's also remember that we get this very vague description that they rely on the mammoths for food, but for reasons that nobody can tell us, the mammoths are coming later and later every year until the last herd of mammoths arrives.
And is there actually, I don't even want to ask this, is there any reason why they call them mannets instead of mammoths?
Yeah, that's just terrible writing.
Okay.
Because we can start right from the beginning here. There's a lot of caveman movies where they make up like a fake language, like they call it a conlang, a constructed language. You ever done a movie with like a totally fictional language, like a Klingon or Dothraki, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Or like Lord of the Rings, yeah.
So I mean that's a way you can do it, and that's pretty cool, but it's a little bit limited because it's hard to write a full language. The other way is to just put it in English and be like, it's a movie, it's just in English, right? And so that's what this movie did, except for Mannock. Why couldn't they translate mammoth? Why do they have a different word for mammoth if we're translating it anyway? It's just, that's your first sign that this movie is terrible, I think.
Let's also talk about how the narrator has less vocabulary than the cavemen, because they call things snow or ice, and he'll be like, the great white rain.
Yeah,
like,
he calls it white rain. What?
I think it speaks to this idea, like I was talking in the Northman, that maybe Josh can back me up on, like this concept that we have, the people were stupid instead of ignorant, grinds my gears, because like, yes, cavemen were obviously ignorant, but objectively they were literally as intelligent as a human being today, because we are the same species of creature.
That's fair.
Another thing that we see a lot in all of our movies is that the past is like really serious and somber and like
nobody laughed until the Roman
sacred.
Empire, apparently.
Yeah.
And like that's the thing, like show the people playing in a scene, like they go on a hunt and it's all serious, it's all ritual, but like just like have them chilling out around fire having fun. They're telling a serious story around the fire, but like, you know, have them laughing and telling jokes, right? Like they would have been doing that.
Also, everybody knows in the back of their head that hunter-gatherer cultures follow the things they kill. They don't just wait in one spot hoping to God they pass back. Because here's the crazy thing about a herd migration is that if it's 15 miles in either direction off one year, you're not going to know they were there. Something is critically wrong with this plot already.
Well, not just that, the fact that they're like, they go over one mountain and then it's an entirely new civilization. And I'm like, they never traveled over one mountain in the entire time that this civilization existed?
And where are these mythological mountains that are the Alps? And then on one side, there's a jungle, and then the jungle leads to the Sahara.
Where are they? That was one of my questions later. Where the heck are they?
Because there are mountains at the mouth of the Nile, and they would be snowier, but they are 100% in like everywhere you go is jungle, and then jungle doesn't just stop and become Sahara Desert. Like that's not how biomes have ever worked in our knowledge. So
you don't even need to know history. You just need to know common sense that like that just doesn't make any sense.
And where it's 10,000 BC, where are the glaciers? You have these giant woolly mammoths walking around. Where are the massive sheets of ice covering literally half of the planet's land? Like where? And if you're not by them, why are you hunting mammoths that aren't going to be there?
Yeah, so what should be an exciting scene is painfully bad due to the choice to simply have the actors run in front of a green screen. $105 million budget, and I don't even think they're actually running. I think they're running in place. I honestly believe they're running in place in front of a green screen. It looks, bro, it looks like a, not even a modern. It looks like a early YouTube video where somebody placed themselves in front of a movie, like where they're like pretending to be in a scene. That's how bad this green screen is.
Well, and this is the era where the importance of practical effects is being completely lost. And to me, based off of like my movie taste, it's solidified in the Hobbit trilogy, which looks way worse than the Lord of the Rings, even though it's 10 years newer, because they don't use like any practical effects in it. But this is also the era where like the Star Wars prequel trilogy has just come out. Harry Potter is coming out. Transformers are coming out. You have like 3 different movie series that are pushing the envelope in what you could do with CGI of relatively the same budget. And then here's this schlock fest of like a guy on a Mac PC just throwing stuff onto a screen.
I don't believe there had to be some like money laundering for the budget to be as high as it was. There's no way. Because there's no names in this.
Where did they film, out of curiosity?
They actually filmed all over the place, which I thought was hilarious.
Why would you film? Bribing, depending on where they went, bribing local governments goes into your movie budget.
That's very possible.
So keep that in mind. Like depending on where they went and what they were and weren't licensed to do, sometimes big budget movies suck because they put all their money into places to film on location, which is cool. But if filming on location is going to cost half your budget, film in a California sandlot like everybody else. Like,
or hear me out. Don't pretend that these 3 different environments that are in completely different places around the world are right next to one another.
Well, pull a Searchers thing. Like if you want to do that, like make the tale would have immediately become still bad, but more epic if it's 3 years instead of like 17 days.
Right. Right.
People can only walk like 20 miles a day max. Okay. Like the most in shape mother effer on the entire planet can walk 20 miles on flat ground. That's it. That's all you got. So how far can you possibly go?
And they're like somehow keeping up with people on horses. Anyways, moving on.
And then later boats.
Yes. Right.
Because we're running through the sand dunes as fast as the boats are sailing down the river.
there's no weight to it. Nobody like they literally tell him like you'll get lost in the desert, and then he gets lost in the desert, and then he's like, I got lost, and he's like, oh, let me go this way, and it's fine. It's like, dude, you lost no one, nothing happened. There's no weight to what there's no consequences for his actions. This dude just sucks from the start.
We'll also get into this later, but cavemen knowing martial arts was a very interesting choice.
Oh my gosh. All right.
They double down on the lack of stakes at the climax, which I guess we'll get into as well, right?
Oh, yes. The 7-minute long climax for the 2-hour awfulness that I had to endure. I even remember being 10 and thinking, well, that was disappointing.
This sucks.
Well, that wasn't
I don't
worth
think 10-year-old me could have made it to the end of this movie.
At least if I sit through a 2-hour Star Wars movie, I have one big fight scene in the beginning, one very plot heavy fight scene in the middle, and a big fight scene at the end, right? Like they break it up for me.
I do want to talk about, just because I'm trying to squeeze history into this.
Good luck.
I do want to talk about how they trap and end up killing this mammoth. So they use a giant net, counterweighted by these massive stones.
Go back to the beginning, though. Before they trap the mammoth in a net, they crawl silently in amongst the feet of the mammoth before they jump up and scare them to chase them. Some common sense should tell you, if you're going to chase a herd of mammoths, don't start in the middle of the herd of mammoths secretly.
There's also this really fun thing called the internet, which if you look it up, woolly mammoths are only 10 feet tall, which is very tall. Don't get me wrong, but it's not these 30-foot monstrosities that we see in this movie. Like woolly mammoths are only marginally larger than like a large African elephant.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah, there are mammoths that are 20 feet tall, but they live in like the African basin and they're not woolly and they just look like elephants on crack cocaine. But like the woolly mammoth, part of the reason people hunted it is because in the era of megafauna, which is just big animals and big plants, it ain't that mega. Like it's really not that big of a thing compared to everything they're surrounded by. So it's a very reasonable expectation the 5 or 6 guys can take down a 10-foot elephant. It's a very unreasonable expectation the 5 or 6 guys can take down a 30-foot elephant, which is what they seem to be facing in this movie.
Would they use a net?
I'll let you answer that one, Josh. Go for it,
my
boy.
My expertise is biology, so keep that in mind. But if you want me to interject like as much knowledge as I've got about the Paleolithic here, I've got lots of little tidbits I can add for you here.
Go for it.
Later in the movie, we see a lot of fine fabrics, right? So I think this might have been one of the things we talked about in our episode on this movie. We have like a documented archaeological history of fabrics, and the oldest linen fibers come from about 30,000 years ago, which people were probably using to make like ropes, probably not fine linens. Like you don't get fine linens like you see in this movie until you invent the loom, which I think was about 5,000 years after this movie takes place.
A lot of the things in this movie are about 5,000 years after this movie.
Pretty much everything is about 5,000 years.
With the exception of the grungy white people with dreads with spears. That seems kind of not wrong, but everything after that.
We also have terror birds, which I guess we'll get into. Those are about 100,000 years out of date, but we'll worry about that later.
Oh, and they also are on the other side of the planet. And as far as we know, people didn't encounter them.
You mean dinosaur ostriches?
Yes.
Yeah, they were real, but they lived in South America and had very, very little exposure to humans because people don't come to the Americas until like 20 or 30,000 years ago, and terror birds are gone by like 15 to 18,000 years ago.
I thought it was like kind of dinosaur-esque. I was like, this seems...
birds are dinosaur-esque.
Weirdly, the terror birds might be the most accurate part in terms of how they look and how they behave. They could be the most accurate part of this movie.
Yeah, so also... okay, so you said they're smaller, but a woolly mammoth, the skin, that spear was not very thick. Would it... I mean, I don't want to say like it's like an alligator skin, you know how like you have to find the soft spot. Would a stick that small probably pierce through a woolly mammoth like that, or no?
So to field what I know, and then I'll let Josh, because even though he's only a biology expert, he knows way more about this than I ever will. I promise you. I've met
welcome to my world. Every episode.
You're so welcome. I feel good. The burden is no longer on my shoulders. But so there are two things that are completely missing in this movie are stone spear tips and herd hunting tactics. And so from what we understand, the idea of cavemen killing mammoths with spears is not super plausible, but the idea of cavemen running 5 to 10 of them off a cliff with their spears
Oh, wow.
and then harvesting it all at once is plausible. Because Clovis points, so flint points, are razor sharp, and
Mhm.
you're probably not going to kill a mammoth with 1 blow or even 5 blows, but you can weaken it and scare it enough that it will go wherever you want it to.
Okay.
And this idea that like hunter gatherers can only exist in like 5, 10, 15 people is not fully correct. It's probably more like 40 or 50, and you need the
Mhm.
mammoth for all year and everything that you do if you're a mammoth hunting pack. So you run more than you need off a cliff or into a pit that you dug already, and then you harvest what you need. The problem, though, is that there is a relatively legitimate theory out there that humans hunted mammoths to expedite their extinction because they didn't have a way to hunt one or two. They hunted them in massive herds. And much like elephants, mammoths don't seem to have reproduced super fast. And so if you kill 15 of them 1 year, there's probably only 5 or 6 of them to replace the 15 the next year.
Okay.
I miss anything, Josh? That sound about right.
That sounds about right. So there's a few things like you said, like herd hunting tactics, right? In this movie, they chase the mammoths into a channel, which makes a lot of sense if you're going to use that sort of trampling where you chase them over a cliff or you get them to trample each other because then they're killing each other. You get a whole bunch of dead mammoths, right? The same thing that the indigenous people did with the buffalo in North America. And we see possibly evidence of this in Europe as well with horses. There's a famous site in France called La Salutrerie, which used to be interpreted as a horse stampede site. I'm not sure if they still think that, but it's definitely a good technique for hunting big animals. In this movie, they channel them into this canyon, and then they wait for them all to go except the last one, and then they try and catch you with a net, which makes no sense.
I was also thinking, you've waited how many years for this mammoth herd to come through, and then you only kill one? Like that doesn't make any sense.
It's also that thing that like just from a weight tactic, even if you only have 20 people in your band, you know, when you kill a 120-pound deer, 60 pounds of that is guts and sinew, and another 20 pounds of it or 30 pounds of it is bone. So usually only about a quarter to a third of the weight of something you kill can actually be useful to you in terms of eating it, hide and ivory aside. And so even if this mammoth is, 10,000 pounds, you maybe harvest 100 pounds of meat per person for an entire year in an Arctic environment where you need a lot of vitamin C and a lot of animal fat. Like that's not, and I don't expect directors to go that deep into it, but hire an expert who can be like, hey man, if you're going to hunt mammoths, you should probably have them kill 3 or 4, or 5 or 6.
I don't think there was a historian.
Oh, there was no way. They probably quit in protest, to be honest with you.
Go ahead.
Another thing is they went after the big bull mammoth, the biggest one. That's not how you hunt a big animal. You go after the small ones, the sick or weak ones, the old ones, the ones that you can single out. If your plan is to single them out and kill them with spears, you don't go for the biggest, strongest one. You go for the most vulnerable one.
Oh, man. All right. Not a good start.
Yeah. I can give you more here. Another thing is that people did hunt mammoths, but mammoths were not usually the big part of the diet because they're big and hard to hunt. In Eurasia, which is where this is probably supposed to be set, broadly speaking, it looks like what we call the mammoth steppe. It's sort of like a tundra kind of environment, right? And so Neanderthals lived there before 40,000 years ago, and then modern humans, which is who this movie is depicting, moved in and replaced the Neanderthals after that. Neanderthals hunted more big animals than modern humans did, and they did hunt mammoths and woolly rhinos and things like that, but more often they're focusing on sort of medium-sized stuff. So at the sites where I work in Eastern Europe, we find a lot of goats and red deer, roe deer. We find lots of deer and goats, like medium-sized mammals. We did find a rhino one time, but I think it was not in a actual level where the Neanderthals were occupying at that time. This differs in different places. But when modern humans in the Upper Paleolithic moved in and replaced Neanderthals, they were more successful, at least partly, because they were better at exploiting a wider range of resources. So they're hunting like smaller mammals, they're doing more trapping, they're fishing, they're getting mollusks. They're exploiting a wider range of resources that are more abundant and easier to catch. And the mammoths are never really abundant because they're too big for there to be that many of them. And so just the idea that at 10,000 years ago we have people that are really heavily relying on mammoths is like, yeah, this is why you guys are going extinct right now, because the mammoths are dying out at 10,000 years ago. You should have shifted your focus to the more reliable food sources that all the other modern humans were focusing on.
And you may very well still rely on them for like your shelter, but because we do have evidence of like mammoth bone shelters, but the thing about ivory and bone is it lasts freaking forever.
Mhm.
So maybe you're suffering a little bit because you don't have the furs that you're used to having or the bones that you're used to having, because it's been 15 or 20 years since your tribe has killed a mammoth and everything's decaying. But it's not the same thing, because you can find other animals with big bones and you can make it work, you know?
I hate to give this movie credit, but the mammoth bone shelters they're living in, that's real. People really did make those mammoth bone shelters, possibly around when this movie was set 12,000 years ago, but at least like I know between 30,000 and 14,000 years for sure. So I don't think they would have put the big mammoth skull right on the top like they did. Kind of seems like that's
Blocks the
unnecessarily, yeah. But the mammoth bone structures are real. That is a true thing.
So what I'm getting is that this movie's not very accurate.
You could have tried to make an inaccurate movie and probably gotten closer than this movie
There
is,
you go.
is what we're telling you.
Eat
We
your heart
haven't
out,
even gotten to
Braveheart.
the mammoths in Egypt yet.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten to the Nubian warlord in 10,000 BC yet. I mean, Shaka
All right,
Zulu
now,
himself.
Hold on, guys. Now we have lots of very thrilling things to get through first. Okay, so
We have birds. That's what we
he's
have.
the-
We
hold on,
have
now-
birds to get there.
now Delay is the leader of the tribe, carrying the white spear. Then he gives it up. Okay, moving on. The invaders come and are literally disguised as demons. He said, I love that there's a little part here where he says, don't kill, capture them. And then the guy walks into a hut and kills someone. Good thing the same irony isn't applied to Evelyn, who is captured instead. So we're going to take our little posse after these demons over the Great Mountain. It's Delay, Karin, and Tik Tik. And then Baku follows behind them because his mother was the woman that was killed, but he does not seem bothered. He just seems like, I'm along for this adventure now. 3 days in the snow with no tracks, yet they're still perfectly on the path. What? Okay. On the other side of the frozen mountain is a jungle. What? I literally
With
laughed
like
out
no
loud.
border. It's not even like there's
No.
a jungle like 3/4 of
They
a mile
can
in
see
the
the
distance.
snowy mountain from the bamboo
Yeah.
forest that they're standing in.
Okay, yeah, there's no like cool weather. It's just freezing cold or tropical. There's no like
And-
in between here.
So suddenly we're in the Himalayas and that's cool, but then like how do we get to Egypt later?
Yeah. So, anyways, first off, how did they catch up already? Apparently, they're on horses and they didn't know where they were going. This doesn't make any sense. I laughed out loud. I put when the dragon thing ate the guy. I think it's one of the birds, but it looked like a dragon when you see it at first through the bamboo. Like you can't see the legs. It looks like a giant bird swooping down and eating him. But like, I don't know. I don't think these things can fly. Maybe they can. Yeah, so most anticlimactic escape scene ever. It's just one bonk on the head and she's free. Like he just bonked, bad guys down, she's free. I put in here prehistoric ostriches attack. I guess they're actual things. Which is worse, CGI bugs or CGI birds?
Ooh.
This is referring to the Mummy, the 1999 Mummy.
No, I know what it's referring
No,
to.
I was
as
explaining
well.
it to Josh. I know you know, Kyle.
I was like, I was there.
Yeah, CGI bugs or CGI birds. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe the birds because they look the same as the bugs, but they're 10 years younger. Like, you know? That's, what I-
Yep. So
or because I've seen the bugs in King Kong, which is 3 years older than this movie, and they look way better than those birds do. So
Oh yeah, Percy Jackson's King Kong. Yeah, that. Gosh dang, there's no
Peter?
reason. There's
Peter
no
Jackson's
reason.
King Kong.
Did I say Percy Jackson? Peter Jackson.
Percy
My bad.
Jackson's King Kong.
Uh,
The Lightning Thief.
the Lightning Thief Kong. Yeah, Peter Jackson's King Kong. Yeah. Yeah. There's no reason for the CGI to be as bad as it is. I don't buy the whole. It's the 2000. No, there was good CGI beforehand.
Jurassic Park still holds up from 1993. If you combine it
100%.
with practical effects and you do it judiciously, you can get away with it.
You remember how I said at the beginning, like he tells her, "You'll never be alone." Well, he says, "I will never leave you again." As soon as he, frees her, and then immediately runs off. He says, "I'll come back for you, I promise."
Proving men have been the same
She
for 12,000 years.
she just gets captured again. I'm like, dude, you suck. You're terrible. Why did you not just take her and run? Just get away. Whatever. The face Tick makes when he's supposedly dying, he looks like he's about to take a nap and needs a sandwich. Okay.
Well,
That-
he's like
that-
one of two competent actors in this movie, and I bet at this point in the filming process, he's like, I don't even care. I
It
don't
looks
even
like
care
he didn't
anymore.
know they were shooting. It looks like he was trying to not fall asleep.
He also
Oh.
has like a cut on his thigh that isn't his femoral artery. So these people are hunter gatherers. People get cut. So again, it's this
Mm-mm.
like people
Mm-mm.
aren't idiots.
He's dying. He's dying.
You
Got a
would
paper
know
cut.
at a glance probably what is and isn't a fatal cut, assuming it doesn't get affected.
Right.
So you're at least in terms of you wouldn't be worried about him dying in the next 3 minutes. You might be worried about him dying in the next 3 days.
Well, actually, they've just been exposed to an entirely new environment that they've never been exposed for.
Oh, they
to-
all have malaria.
It's
Every single one of them.
apparently for generations now. So yeah, they have no antibodies for anything around them. They're all dead.
Correct. What's not listed is that 5 minutes after the finale, they all die of like mad cow disease.
All right, we're going to get to the saber-toothed tiger scene. And okay, is this a little bit of a Mandela effect? Do you or do you not remember there being a shot in the trailer of him and the saber-toothed tiger on like the side of a cliff? Does anyone remember that?
It's the movie poster.
It's the poster, but I
It's
could
the
have
poster
sworn...
is him facing down the tiger with
Yes,
a spear.
I could have sworn it was in the trailer as well, and then I watched multiple trailers, and it's not. It's not
It's
in
like in
any of
Rogue
them.
One where she faces down like a TIE fighter or something, and then that doesn't happen in the movie. And it's like the most iconic shot in the trailer just isn't there.
I think Kyle's gonna break the record for the most Star Wars references.
I'm
in
sorry.
one
It's
episode.
just that when you have a boring movie with bad CGI, I have to bring up boring movies with good CGI that make them worth watching. I can't help it.
Yeah, so someone needs to do a side-by-side comparison of the CGI Sabretooth that's in the movie and the one that's on the poster. Not even close to the same, like not even the same color. They're completely different.
Well, the one in the poster is about 5 times too big,
Right.
and the one in the
Yeah.
movie is only about 2 times too big. So
I was gonna
Well-
say you have a cave lion sized Smilodon like running around here.
Smilodon, also a North and South American genus.
Still not right. Love
Woolly
it.
mammoths also are mostly North America and Northern Europe at this point. So where you're going, where woolly mammoths and deserts are anywhere near each other, I have no idea.
So he tells the Sabretooth, who's trapped under this log. Okay, anyone else did they feel sorry for the Sabretooth in this? I was like, oh, I hope he saves him. And I was like, okay,
No.
obviously don't save him. That's a stupid thing to do. But I was like, oh, poor cat's drowning. Anyways, he tells the Sabretooth, do not eat me when I set you free. Yeah, that's not how that works.
It is how it works in this movie.
In this scene,
He talks to the dagger tooth.
for the first time since starting this podcast, I was legitimately questioning if I could just read a synopsis and no one would know the difference because we have an hour left and I've been bored for 45 minutes. I was like, okay, can something freaking happen? Oh, don't worry, guys. Don't worry. Our B plot is going to get kind of spelled out in front of us. So the Naku,
We forgot to, speaking of being bored, we forgot to mention that the warlord sounds like this. Like,
it's not even the worst. That's not even the worst one. No, the worst one is the one at the end. The ancient people who literally, it's not even it doesn't make sense. Their language, it's not words. Their language is the fact that they inhale when they speak. That's how they speak, is they inhale to talk.
Yeah.
Like, Yeah. So, anyways, the
The
Naku,
soft palate issue. It's not a language.
the Naku call him the one who speaks to the spear tooth. That has to be the most excellent line for the most excellent reasons. So he's the Naku not so subtly spell out that Delay's father, you know, the one that abandoned him, did reach their land. Okay, and he just literally goes, okay, like just does. He doesn't care at all.
And was there long enough to teach them their language.
Why?
But only one of them.
But only one
you
of them.
only teach one person the language.
I'm sorry. How does first off, we've been building supposedly have been building to this since like the first 2 minutes of the movie starting, and now the payoff is, oh yeah, he reached this land, and he's like, cool. That's it. Did he do anything? He taught a guy a language. Okay. That's it. He didn't tell you, hey, by the way, there's a whole civilization over that mountain.
Especially because like this people group is obviously like a farmer society. And so
Right.
at no point were you like, yes, you should go get my people down off the mountain so they don't starve to death when the manic stop
yeah.
coming.
You didn't know they came back. Like you, as far as he knows, like they're still waiting for the mammoths to reherd in their vicinity. Apparently, like it doesn't make any sense.
The
I
tribal
didn't
leader
pick
for
this
that
up.
tribe.
I didn't
Go
pick
ahead.
this up before you mentioned it just now, but he taught one guy his language, and that one guy remembered it for 20 years until his son showed up. I didn't notice that part until he just mentioned it now.
And he
Didn't teach anybody, and it's flawless.
He didn't speak that
It's
language
flawless.
to anybody else because there was nobody else who knew the language.
Right.
So he just remembered it fluently for 20 years.
And in 20 years, he didn't try to teach anyone else the same
Except
language.
his son. He taught his son the language, as we
Oh,
find out later.
Freaking yeah.
Freaking
okay.
royalty, man. I
All right.
swear.
All right. So why the one who speaks to the spear tooth is the most excellent line is because it makes no sense. He talked
It's 'cause
to a
it's the only good
saber-toothed
line.
tiger, and then the saber-toothed tiger. Oh, we didn't even mention the saber-toothed tiger saves these people from being killed by the Naku, for reasons,
And then leaves and never comes back.
and then is never seen again. So yeah,
he
that's
doesn't
why
even ride the tiger, guys. I mean, come on. If you're going to make a movie this bad, let the man ride the saber-toothed tiger.
as he's chasing mammoths down the side of a pyramid. Okay.
Yes.
I'm telling you, man, Arnold Schwarzenegger could have killed it because he would have had like creative control over these things, and he would have been like, no, I'm riding a saber-toothed tiger. So they're having him lead them to the mountain of the gods, hot on the trails of our captors, as well as being joined by 3 other tribes. Our saber-doof leads them into battle before our baddies reveal they have the newest invention, boats. What are we going to do
Great
about these
birds.
boats?
Great birds.
Oh my gosh. Our band of merry men arrive at the head of the snake, aka Egypt, with woolly mammoths helping build the pyramids. I don't even want to ask. There's no, I mean, there's nothing real here, right?
Other than mammoths and the pyramids existed at the same time.
This is what it is. Roland Emmerich heard that little factoid. He's like, "Oh, the pyramids of Egypt were built 5,000 years ago. Woolly mammoths went extinct like 10,000 years ago, except for this one little population that was a holdout on Wrangel Island up in the northern Arctic of Russia, where they persisted for 4,000 years ago. So there was a period of time when mammoths were alive and the pyramids existed." And Roland Emmerich is like, "So mammoths built the pyramids, you say? Let's put that in a movie." There's no other explanation. Like, it's so arbitrary to put the mammoths in here. Also, these slavers travel from Egypt through the Middle East, through presumably India, through the jungle, over the Himalayas, and into Siberia to capture not only slaves but also mammoths and transport those mammoths back to Africa where elephants already live. And they're woolly mammoths, so they don't do well in the African heat. So why didn't they just use the African elephants that already live in Africa?
And you have a bigger species of elephant available because you have the super trainable and very large Barbary elephant that Rome wipes out at this point, which is like Carthage's war bread and butter a couple thousand years down the line. So like you have these amazingly ready elephants that you can
Even
use.
closer to Egypt than the elephants that are still in Africa today, right? Like,
Yep.
Can we
the
take
elephants are right there.
You just said something, and I just realized this. Okay, so these slavers went from where the pyramids are being built all the way down this long river through the jungle over the side of a mountain to grab 20 people, and not everyone that's available. just like 20 people, and then dragged like that was their end point, and then they came all the way back immediately. How what? Like how would the slavers know about
While
them?
there are still like 300 able-bodied warriors a stone's throw away from where you're at. Like,
right. Why did you not capture the Naku?
yeah, it's a great question.
What?
They're protected by the Sabretooth. That's what it is. You can't. What the Naku don't know is that everybody who comes into the village, the Sabretooth cat growls at them. That's
all right. We're moving on. All right. I put in here, who are these people? Some say they flew across the water when their land sank into the sea. Here in just a minute, Josh, I want to hear your Atlantis. I don't want to call it a theory, whatever you call it, but I want to hear that. But I want to get through the rest of this movie real fast.
Okay.
So good old yeet off the wall for not working fast enough. Now we're back to the tribe called questioning why I'm here. Or Delay sneaks in, and the Naku leader, which they just named Nakudu, convinces the captured ones to fight alongside them, but they're like, I'm not gonna do that. So they learn some information from a wise man. How many wise men or prophets are we up to now? Or like people who have supernatural abilities? Oh, also, let's add in here the dad that you've been searching for, like nonchalantly, like secondary throughout this movie. Yeah, he died a long time ago. He was here, but he's dead. And Tit's dead too now. Along with my will to ever watch another movie, you've ruined
because
them
Tick
all.
Tick did not double tap the guards that using. This is what I was talking about. Why does a hunter gatherer Cro-Magnon guy know spear martial arts? Like,
why was Tick Tick by himself compared to everyone else?
But not how to kill people with a spear. No. Like everybody can figure out how to kill somebody with a spear, and some people can be really good at it. How does he know organized staff fighting martial arts that can take on 3 guys at once who are armed with swords and shields and spears?
He's just said okay to everything. All right, your father left to save his people. Okay. Why'd you tell me? You needed to know. Okay. Your father's dead. Okay. The spear is yours now. Okay. What? There was no reaction to any of these things that are supposed to be like his journey, like into becoming the leader of his people.
The only thing that's any character growth is he gives the spear back to Tick Tick because he doesn't actually stand his ground and kill the mammoth. The mammoth runs on the spear.
And then
but then Tick Tick's like, even though you've done absolutely nothing to prove yourself worthy of the spear, I'm dying and I'm not going to give it to one of these black people out here. So here you go.
He talked to the spear tooth. So now now he gets the spear.
Yeah. That's what I whispered sweet nothings to that elk over there. Give me the spear, baby. Let's go.
I lied. I'm sorry. I said my most excellent line earlier. It's not. This is the most excellent line. I don't even know his name. The main slave guy is about to, it looks like, do some dark things with our, I already forgot her name, Evelyn. The guards break in and they say, "You stole a slave from the Almighty?" And he turns around and he goes, "I own her." It's like, God dang, dude, you're the worst. Yeah. So they're attempting a mass exodus by getting the Manic to charge and break rank. Karen sacrifices himself because someone had to. Someone always has to.
Karen also knows dual wielding martial arts, apparently.
Boom, mammoth stampede. But in the path of their stampede would be like mostly other slaves, right? Like most of the people working are slaves.
No, it's okay. All the slaves managed to run and hide behind the mammoths. I don't know. Behind the mammoths, Dustin.
That's what I was watching. I was like, didn't you just kill a bunch of slaves by like having these mammoths run through them? You're the good guy? Whatever. Apparently amongst the freed slaves is Hercules because they push a house-sized solid piece of gold off the top of the pyramid. Also not explained in any way. I remember that the part in your podcast where you're like, how would you even get that thing up there? First off, there's no way that much gold is available. And then second off, how would you get it to the top in one piece?
Okay, but here's the crazy thing is that the top of the pyramid was originally coated in gold.
Coated, not solid.
Not solid. Not solid.
There's a big difference.
But the pyramids originally were coated in gold, and then they were there was white quartz on the outside of them. which is why they were pillaged.
Right. That's why they were stolen, right?
That's why they are now sandstone piles, is because everybody for 5,000 years is like, I want a piece of that thing.
All right.
We have something that Roland Emmerich got vaguely right. Like he heard it in the Fever Dream one
but
time.
like way worse and way less realistic.
Oh yeah.
And also totally unnecessary. It did nothing for the plot. Like it was not important. It was just, again, like he heard something. He's like, yes. Fact check. No, I'm good. I've got this. I made Independence Day. I think I know what I'm talking about.
I know what I'm doing.
Okay, we have a little bit of suspense here when Evelyn is tied up, each limb attached to a horse, I think. They're like
four-legged demon, Dustin. Please use the correct
I'm sorry.
vernacular.
I'm sorry. A four-legged demon.
Don't insult their culture like this. Okay.
Yeah, so he goes up, Delay goes up towards our covered, clearly just visible enough for you to see that he's like the only white person around, but clearly covered person. And he's like, are you going to set the slaves free? And he's like, no. And so he does a spear throw to kill our big bad. Somebody watched 300 a couple years before this, but like made it way worse. And then he like they didn't say it in 300, which is by far not a perfect movie, but like holy shit, it's a cinema masterpiece compared to this. So in 300, he throws the spear and he cuts his cheek, proving that he's not a god. He is in fact human. What do we do here? We throw the spear, we kill him because that's better, I guess. And then he turns around and says, look, he is actually a man, not a god. It's like, yeah, we got that. You don't have to say it out loud.
We saw the other super inaccurate movie that was much better than this one, Roland. It's okay.
Yeah. Heroic music, slow motion fighting. Can this please be over? Did you, I don't know, this is a very specific shot, but did you think that Baku was going to kill Tudu with the spear? The, Nakuru's son? He throws the spear and he misses, but like, it looks like he's going to accidentally kill his friend. I was like, oh, wouldn't that be? That'd be the most random thing to just put in at the very end of the movie. No explanation. I'm just saying. It would have been something.
It would have made it better. I like how Nakudu just shows up in this giant melee because, yeah, you have heat seeker vision on your son in this group of 10,000 people.
Yes.
And you arrive just in time to hurl a spear over your son's shoulder from a distance of at least 45 or 50 feet to kill the guy holding him.
Yes.
Obviously.
All right. End of our movie here. Evelyn takes it from behind. An arrow, that is. Then Delay bones the guy that killed her. All right. Are you following? And then she says, with her dying breath, you came for me. This writes itself. Come on. Come on. Seriously? Seriously?
Cut and print. We'll fix it in post.
Apparently she had quick revive. Old mother sacrifices herself so she can return to the land of the living. But like, hold on a second. This is an arrow wound. She has a wound. It's not syphilis. You don't just fight it off. She has a wound. She would wake up and then bleed out again.
Also,
that doesn't make sense.
Why are Evelyn and Old Mother spiritually connected? She's from a different tribe.
Right. But she has blue eyes, Kyle. But she has blue eyes. Yes. Which I'm 99% sure contacts the entire time.
It is, though, one thing that I think they got interestingly almost incorrectly is that all blue-eyed people do come from one common ancestor, but that ancestor didn't exist yet in 10,000 BC.
You know what? There was just a study that came out like last week where they did a DNA from a 16,000-year-old skeleton from Italy and determined that it was a child. He had dark skin and blue eyes from 16,000 years ago.
The plot thickens.
Oh, wow.
So It's one of these things where you were wrong for a decade and then science moves along and accidentally proves you're right.
And that's like inverse. In Roland Emmerich's defense, this movie is made even worse by the recent consensus that Egypt paid the workers who built the pyramids.
Yes, absolutely.
In 2008, we were still very obsessed with this idea that you only have public works projects through slavery. So that part he's excused of just simply the slaves. No other part of the pyramid construction, but the ramp and the slaves. In his defense, when he was making this movie, that was the widely accepted theory.
You know what? We have a game we play on our podcast called Caveman Movie Bingo, where we call out bingo every time we hit one of these tropes that shows up in every movie. And that blue eyes is one of the tropes. The lead actress has to have blue eyes, usually blonde hair. It's usually blonde hair and blue eyes, usually
Ooh.
like from the 60s to the 80s. All the
I was a
cavemen.
little upset that a Raquel Welch lookalike didn't show up in this movie because nothing says caveman like a leather bikini and 36 double D. Okay, like obviously that's
What
how a
movie is
caveman
this? Maybe we should do it next.
It's not worse than this one, I don't think, but
It's not much better.
it's not much better.
There's this whole sort of class of caveman movies from the 60s and 70s where there's no plot. And this is very much like it. You have some cave people, there's a man and a woman, they wander around, and then the movie ends. And at least there's sort of a climax to this one. But 1 Million Years BC with Raquel Welch, I don't remember what the plot is. A guy gets kicked out of his tribe, he gets rescued by Raquel Welch, they wander around. I think maybe a volcano kills everybody at the end. I actually don't remember what happens at the end of that one.
But here's the thing: it doesn't matter because Raquel Welch is in it, and so
That's true. It's it's a conflict, right?
it shamelessly is like boobs. Like that movie's like there is no plot. The plot
At
is
least
this
give
hot
me
chick.
something.
Okay,
All right. At least they had something.
and sadly, that's more thought out than the plot of this movie.
I wish a volcano would have killed me before the end of this movie. All right. Josh, you have you had some interesting points about Atlantis and aliens, and I want to hear kind of where do these supposed gods among men come from, and where does this idea that aliens helped build the pyramids originate?
Yeah, if you hadn't listened to our episode, I was going to ask you if you knew what this movie was really about, because I think most people watch this and what the inspiration for this movie is totally flies under the radar, unless you're deep into some pseudo-archaeology conspiracy theory circles, which is what this movie is really based on. So the key, there's a whole bunch of little, let's say, breadcrumbs in this movie that reveals where Roland Emmerich is taking his inspiration from. You already said the line when they're talking about where these people come from. Some say they come from the stars, ancient aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Others believe they flew across the Great Water when their land sunk into the sea, Atlantis. And so you've got the two major flavors of pseudo-archaeology here, ancient aliens or Atlantis. And both of these are different versions of something we call hyperdiffusionism in archaeology. And so cultural diffusion is this idea that, cultural ideas spread between cultures, right? Like a new idea pops up in one culture and then it spreads to their neighbors. And over time, it moves through space and the idea picks up and spreads, right? And that's real. But hyperdiffusionism is this old, outdated idea that there was one progenitor culture that invented everything and then spread it all around the world. And everywhere around the world, when they start doing this thing, it's because a big smart culture invented it in the first place, and then it spread to them. So it's this idea that everything traces back to a single culture.
So is this like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? Trying to he finds the source of everything is this alien head. I'm not remembering
there's
that movie,
basically
right?
two flavors of hyperdiffusionism, and they're both white supremacist, right?
Okay.
It's either ancient aliens or it's Atlantis. And they're fundamentally the same thing. They are either aliens came down, taught humans how to invent the things that they did. So aliens built the pyramids because ancient Egyptians weren't smart enough to learn how to stack rocks in a triangle, right? and then the aliens went to Mesoamerica and taught the Mayans how to build pyramids,
but
because
in
the
a
Mayans weren't
different
smart
way
enough.
to cover their tracks.
Just slightly different, right? Or ancient aliens.
I'm not even joking. That's like what the excuse is. It's so that nobody knew in case they went across the ocean that they were the same group.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
And this is why it's all conspiracy theory, because it's not based on evidence. It's based on coming up with a nice, tidy idea and then tying up your loopholes that don't make any sense, right?
Okay.
Ancient Aliens is starting to fall out of popularity. It really peaked in the sort of mid to late 2000s. Yeah, so the Atlantis theory is older than Ancient Aliens, but because Ancient Aliens is falling out now, there's a new flavor of Atlantis that is sort of rebranded and tries to distance itself a little bit from using the word Atlantis a lot of the time, but it's still the same idea, which we actually trace back to, most of the time we're tracing it back to 1882, when Ignatius Donnelly, an American politician, wrote a book called Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, where he set out this idea that Atlantis was a real place. The people of Atlantis were very technologically advanced and white. Very important. Historically, it's always been very important that the Atlanteans were white. We're trying to the pseudo archaeologists are trying to cover that up now. They don't want to bring that part out. But as you know, as recent as the 1990s, the same people were saying white as well, which we can say. I'll get into who exactly that is that I'm talking about. But so Ignatius Donnelly writes this book and basically says the Atlanteans lived on this island. They had this perfect, highly advanced technological civilization. They spread all around the world and basically seeded all of the great civilizations of the world. So none of these civilizations developed on their own. They all were seeded there by the Atlanteans coming in and spreading their culture and teaching the local people how to have good technology and stuff. And then some big cataclysm wiped out Atlantis and sunk the island below the sea. So anyway, we see Atlantean hyperdiffusionism in Indiana Jones. We see ancient aliens hyperdiffusionism in Indiana Jones. It's when you have archaeology presented in a popular way and not sort of a historically realistic way, somehow it's always hyperdiffusionism. It's one of these two flavors at the base of it, somehow, all the time.
It's also backed up because until recently, relatively recently, we couldn't read hieroglyphs and we couldn't read Mesoamerican languages. And even in the 1880s, like 7 people could read hieroglyphs. It was more than that, but very, very few people could read hieroglyphs, and very, very few hieroglyphs had been read. And so you could get away with these theories. The crazy part about hyperdiffusionism and Atlanteans and aliens and stuff now is we know how they did it. They told us, and the record survived, and people just refuse to believe that these cultures could do this thing because, as I talk about a lot on this podcast, people are obsessed with this idea that history progresses linearly in every way possible, and that people have gotten progressively worse at things the farther back you go, and that's not true. If the technology available to Rome had increased in a straight line upwards, we'd have hover cars and have space colonies right now in terms of what we can do versus what we have. But secrets get lost. The people who know how to do things die. Civilizations collapse. And there are many parts, even in human history, where objectively you can see a massive technological step backwards because the Aztecs did not have the stone making capabilities of the Maya, but they were brilliant in other ways. And the Inca did not have the heavy freight animals of Asia, or who knows what their civilization would look like. So it's this thing where now that they've told us how they did it, it's becoming way more of a fringe theory than it used to be, because it's like, nah, dude, we know how they built the pyramids. They literally, like, we found the freaking manifesto on how they built the pyramids.
Well, let's get into the pseudo-archaeology of it, because I'll tell you about a few modern pseudo-archaeology theories that are rebranding this. And it's
the hydrogen chamber in the pyramid. Please tell me you're going to talk about the hydrogen chamber in the pyramid.
No, I don't know. Here, I'll go over what I've got that's specifically in this movie, okay? So some say they came from the stars, others believe they flew across the Great Water when their land sank into the sea. The movie's telling us it's either aliens or Atlanteans. And from this point in the movie, I'm like, okay, which one is it? I got to find out. We do find out at the end, it's a man. It is a very pasty white man, which is very important to that Atlantis myth, right? We can see the white supremacy even in this movie. The people who are building the pyramids are white, and the rest of the people, there's no other really white people in the movie,
but
right?
The hunter-gatherer heroes are more white than everybody else.
Blue-eyed, right? And this is why that blue-eyed, even though it's technically true. Now we've found a skeleton with blue eyes from 16,000 years ago. This idea of this blue-eyed blonde hero and heroine are part of this white supremacy that it's just the sort of racism that's foundational to our culture that we don't really think about, right? Okay, so are they aliens or Atlanteans? Okay, so they're humans, therefore we can assume they're white Atlanteans. Here's all the little breadcrumbs we get leading up to the point where the white god is killed. The pyramids and the Sphinx are being built 10,000 BC, 12,000 years ago. Of course, they were both built about 5,000 years ago. This date, though, is not arbitrary. This date aligns with a few different things. One of them is the current rebrand of Atlantis. It's called the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis. Have you heard of this one?
He's not asking me, but I'm going to say no.
The last ice age ends about 12,000 years ago, right? So this time period is the shift between the Pleistocene and the Holocene period. But right at the end of the Ice Age, there's a short period of about 1,000 years called the Younger Dryas. And it is a period where the Earth's been getting warmer and warmer and warmer, and then suddenly there's a crash in temperatures. There's this ice age, which would have occurred probably on the matter of like decades, like within people's lifetimes. It went from pretty close to our average temperatures to ice age temperatures. And this is a real climate event. Now, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis is the idea that there was some sort of asteroid impact that caused this minor ice age. And whether or not an asteroid caused the ice age that's a question for geology and everything. And I don't think there's good evidence for it. But where pseudoarchaeology takes this is they say there was an advanced civilization right before the Younger Dryas. And it led to hyperdiffusionism. It spread its culture everywhere around the Earth. And then a comet strikes, the Younger Dryas hits, it causes flooding, it sinks this island under the sea, wipes out all evidence of this culture except for the cultures they spawned. And this is an idea being pushed by a guy named Graham Hancock, who has a new show on Netflix that came out in 2022. And the new season just dropped last week called Ancient Apocalypse. Have you heard of him or this show?
I tried to watch it thinking it was legit. I got 7.5 minutes in and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I can't with this show.
And this is a huge deal in the archaeological community because when the first season came out, archaeologists responded like crazy. There were so many articles. All of the news outlets were basically saying, this is terrible. It's a rebrand of Atlantis, and Atlantis is racist. And you can't just rebrand it and say, oh, it's not racist anymore because we don't make the guys white anymore, right? So you can't just rebrand it, right? Also, there's no archaeological evidence for it. Also, whether or not the originator culture is white, it's still diminishing to every other culture in the world because it's saying they didn't invent their own culture, right? And so archaeology had a whole reaction to this. In particular, an archaeologist named Flint Dibble, this is his real name. Is
it really?
Please tell me I want his party name to be Flibble so bad. Like,
I just want to know what his middle name is.
I don't know his middle name. His father was Harold Dibble, who was a really prominent archaeologist. Dibble is the real last name. But Harold Dibble was such an archaeologist, he named his two sons Flint and Chip. So Flint Dibble is his real name.
Oh, boy. Chip off the old block, I see.
Oh, dang it, Kyle. Go home.
I am home. That's where we record from.
Shoot.
But, okay, Flint Dibble goes hard against Graham Hancock on Twitter and like gets a big following, and big enough that Graham Hancock pays attention, invites him to debate him on Joe Rogan. And that happened last April. And that was huge. And by most accounts, Flint Dibble won. And Graham Hancock has been in defense mode since then, right? His new season is out, and instead of promoting his new season, he's just bad mouthing Flint Dibble all over social media, trying to say Flint Dibble lied, right? Dibble cited all of his sources, right? They're all there for you to read, right? But anyway, so right now, this weekend, today, we're recording this October 25th, 26th, 27th. Flint Dibble and a few others have organized a sort of online festival where they've got a whole bunch of content creators together, and he's doing a bunch of live streams, and they're just promoting the shit out of archaeology content creators. And so I don't know when this episode's going up, but I'm sure all these live streams and all of the other content that went up will still be there. So you could check out real-archaeology.com and get a whole list of archaeology YouTubers and podcasters and all kinds of cool stuff. But so it led to a whole big thing. Now, Graham Hancock, his show is new, but he's spouting off ideas that originate with his book from 1995 called Fingerprints of the Gods, and then a later book called Magicians of the Gods. And between those two books, it's this whole idea. In 1995, it wasn't the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. It was an outdated crustal displacement theory, which got disproved when they discovered plate tectonics. So even by 1995, that was about 30 years out of date.
Ooh.
But Roland Emmerich has said that Fingerprints of the Gods was a big inspiration for both this movie and for 2012. So we can see that this is what we see in this movie. I'm not making stuff up. I'm not seeing connections that aren't there. Roland Emmerich has said that's what this movie is about, right?
Wow. That's incredible. In like a really stupid sort of way.
It's like he's involved in a cult, and he expects the rest of the world to be involved in a cult. And so he was like, oh, this is good. This is good. Everyone's going to get it. And then everyone watched it and was like, what is happening?
But you know what?
Pick up on all these things.
That's exactly what it is. Think about what Roland Emmerich has done. Stargate, that's ancient aliens, right? Aliens went to ancient Egypt in Stargate, right? Independence Day, that's Area 51. That's a government conspiracy, right? Then we've got... this movie, we've got 2012, which are both hyperdiffusionist Atlantean sort of theories. We've got what else? There's Stargate Atlantis. I don't know what that's about, but it's obviously about Stargates and Atlantis. So we've got both Alien and Atlantis hyperdiffusion.
Is that his newest one? Or no, Moon. Oh, what is it? I don't know.
Moonfall?
Yeah, a Moonfall.
Moonfall is a hollow moon theory. That's another conspiracy theory. So Roland Emmerich is a conspiracy theory guy. He's deep into this stuff.
And The Patriot is not a conspiracy theory, but we talked about how it is a heavily stylized and completely fictional, with the exception of a few names and places, interpretation of the Revolutionary War and what it was like. And I come back to there was no white guy in South Carolina who would have paid black people to work on his farm in 1776.
No.
Nice try, Roland.
Mel Gibson single-handedly saved America, okay? I was there.
My mistake. Well, to follow up on that theory, because we're pushing Dustin's ability to edit this into a manageable whole, but those were all amazing. The last one I'm going to throw at you, and I don't know nearly as much about it as you do your theories, not your theories, the theories you just taught us about. There's a pyramid hydrogen generator theory that is roaming around Reddit, where all the sweaty neckbeards live in their basements who read 3 Wikipedia pages and think they have history doctorates are convinced that this is true.
Hey man, we met through Reddit. Careful.
No, not your Reddit. Not credible Reddit. Not Reddit where you read it and people like type normal message. You know the Reddit I'm talking about. Deep Reddit. Deep Reddit. Okay.
I don't think I found Deep Reddit. I keep hearing about these things and I'm like, mine's like movies and podcast stuff.
You have to like Google. I think the thing about Deep Reddit is you have to Google the theory and then Reddit appears. But it's like you can't find it on Reddit. But if you type in like pyramid hydrogen, the first thing that pops up is like a Reddit thread on it.
Right.
Anyway,
like when I was getting cut off when I was talking about the simulation, I had been doing research because we watched a movie and it said the number of the devil was 741. And I'm like, I got to figure out what that means. So I Googled devil 741 and I get a post from r/superstonk talking about the simulation.
And if you went to Reddit and you looked for that, you'd never find it. You
exactly
have to find it, Jason. Anyway, Reddit's a wasteland. It's a cool thing, and I'm glad we have it. It's a wasteland. Anyway, the pyramid hydrogen generator theory, which is also the Apis bull hydrogen generator theory, is this weird kind of like ancient alien, but not, because there's like a counterculture now that, well, Egyptians were cooler than we ever thought. It's the same line of thinking that are convinced that like African civilizations colonized the Americas before white Europeans. It's this weird, like, okay, you want to have a obviously kind of racist Atlantis theory, we're going to come right back at you with a black Africans conquered the world once and then we all forgot about it sort of theory. It's the same level of more or less unfounded. They're usually a little less openly hostile towards other cultures, but it's the same level of pseudoscience and like pick and choose archaeology. This one, though, is that obviously the Egyptians were too smart to spend that much money and that much manpower to just build an empty tomb monument. So what they actually did, because they were geniuses ahead of their time, is they built these giant granite hydrogen chambers where they harnessed hydrogen somehow through ways that don't make sense even when you read the explanations to produce electricity. And ancient Egypt had electricity. And the reason you have these giant granite things is because they had electric tools that we just haven't found, but they knew how to do it. And the pyramids were hydrogen chambers that made the electricity, and the Apis Bull Temple was giant hydrogen chambers to make more electricity. And Egypt had light until eventually it just didn't when other people encountered it, and it very much did not have light.
But we do know that they did have electric light bulbs because there is one carving in ancient Egypt of a flower that looks kind of like a light bulb if your light bulb looked a bit like a flower.
Yes.
Also,
yes.
we know that they had batteries because they found a battery in Iraq 500 years later. There might have been a battery, but wasn't a battery.
Welcome to Fringe history, baby.
One last little thing for you here. Mm-hmm. There's literally a map of Atlantis in this movie. Did you catch that?
I did not, but I listened to it in your podcast, and then I literally looked for it in the movie, and it must have been one of the times
flies
where
by so fast.
I couldn't. I was scrolling through YouTube for like half of this. I was like, gosh, just end, please. This movie just it was so bad. This movie does not deserve. I know I sent you a message about Bit is Dope, Bit is Nope, but it would be Bit is Nope, Bit is Nope. I don't know a Bit is Dope. I don't know what I would put for this.
My biggest dope, one word, birds. Not the ships, the terror birds. From what we can tell, the terror birds aren't bad. And let's be real, a 10-foot tall predatory ostrich would be as terrifying as it is in the movie. Ignoring the fact that it couldn't have possibly been geographically where it was. Nobody ever would have encountered it, and they wouldn't have hunted in massive packs of killer ostriches because that's not how large birds work. The actual design of the killer bird itself is sadly maybe the best thing in the movie. My biggest nope is the other hour and 53 minutes of the movie. I'm not even going to try to make a biggest nope. Shh.
I'm pretty sure it's an hour 49, and my biggest dope is the time marker of 1 hour and 50 minutes. This movie needed a freaking end. God, it was so bad. This is the worst one we've done. Josh, thanks so much for coming on. Maybe we'll bring you back on for a better movie sometime.
Oh yeah, for sure. The bad ones are sometimes more fun to talk about, though.
Like a fun bad one, I think would be better. We did a Wyatt Earp. We keep referring to Wyatt Earp. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's
no,
you don't. But it's like laughably bad. It's Kevin Costner's ego for 3 hours,
and there's enough
horrible.
Good moments in it that you're like, all right, there's something I can talk about that went decently well in this movie.
Things
like, it's
happen.
That type of bad.
That's true. Things happen. Anyways, this is just bad. This is a 0 out of 10. Please destroy every copy of this movie ever. All right, but anyways, thanks again, Josh. Screens of the Stone Age. Screens or screen?
Screens of the Stone Age.
All right, and you guys everywhere for podcasts?
Everywhere you can find your podcasts, and we're on YouTube too.
Perfect. All right. Well, check them out. We'll be back next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.